I say that on a different level, of course, about Mike Chanachuk, too. When you watch Chanachuk, Wayne, every time he touches the ball, something's going on.
Well, I see that more about our super freshman number 15.
Rambo's another guy. Yeah,
He's the guy that gets my attention. And now, not to turn this into a lacrosse segment too, Colin Heacock has that look of an instant superstar, and he's a guy, I guess he wears number 41 for the Terps now, but he's got that style.
Have I converted you? Are you almost there? You're not where I'm at yet with lacrosse, but you're getting there.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get to where you are, because I'm sure there's medical procedures to fix that. But the biggest thing about following these sports isn't really the games, it's everything else. And when you talk about everything else, it's knowing who the recruits are and knowing what you need as a team, and then getting to meet the kids almost before they get here, and then following the development, and becomes part of what you do. And it's the same love and passion that we have for Maryland overall, and that's why when you change leagues or you look back at these games, they can still bring a tear to your eye or make you smile, because it really starts to mean something to you. So yeah, I'm getting there with lacrosse.
Well, the access to the lacrosse kids, it's a lot easier. You don't have 400 press fighting for every minute. You know, we're there with 2 or 3 other guys.
And they appreciate that we're there, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mason, you're up, baby. Listen, we're going to talk about our favorite seasons, our favorite games in the ACC, and Mason is going to talk about his favorite season as a younger kid, because he certainly doesn't go back as far as we do, Wayne. But
no.
He follows it with a religious passion that...
well, that passion rivals where we are.
Yeah, it does. Maybe even a little bit more so. You know, I'm not crying after losses anymore. But
there's 1 or 2 games can still make me cry. But we were talking, of course, about the best ACC seasons. So what's your recollection, Mason?
Well, my favorite season is definitely the 2010 year. I was an 8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And this is a team that I just really fell in love with.
Okay, so who was on the team?
Well, Maryland had 3 seniors that year: Gravis Vasquez, Eric Hayes, and Landon Milburn, along with Jordan Williams and Sean Mosley.
And what we used to call Jordan Williams, all dressed up in that home yellow?
The school bus.
The school bus. He did look like a big school bus. So take me through your highlights in 2 minutes or so of 2010.
Well, it starts with a game in a snowstorm, Maryland UNC.
Yeah, that was a snowmageddon moment, wasn't it?
I could not get there for that game. I got trapped on the Baltimore Beltway. I turned around. Was that Super Bowl Sunday? I'm pretty sure it was.
It probably was, because I had to go up on the roof and knock the snow off the DirecTV dish.
Okay.
So we get to the game, fire up the Tahoe. I was worried we weren't going to make it, so we get there really early. And then, what's the thing that stands out about that game to you?
Well, they asked all the fans to come down because there's only 7,000 people there.
Yeah.
And Maryland just comes out with an amazing amount of energy and just crushed the heels.
You know, I've been to 2 of those snow games. One was a Wake Forest game a few years ago, and that UNC game, and the crowd is a lot more into it because they survived the snowstorm and made it to the game. So, okay, so that was a big win, and then we followed up with?
Duke, at Duke in Durham, and Maryland just gets destroyed.
Yeah,
about
they
what,
did.
56-77, and I was crying in that game. That was just one of the most upsetting losses that I think I've ever seen.
Okay, but you lived through it.
Especially because you told me that this team will never quit and will get up again and beat Duke.
Yeah, I did think after losing like that we'd come back and get them. So it takes us, well, there's a couple more. Go ahead through what you got there.
Well, Maryland plays Georgia Tech in a really close-knit game, and it was about 74-74, and here comes Gravis Vasquez weaving through the Georgia Tech defense, and he throws up a half-court shot. And it goes in, and I think we've won.
Yeah.
Timeout, Keith Booth.
Yeah. Even Gary Williams didn't know where that timeout came from. So, what happens next?
Well, Maryland goes to the inbound, and Maryland's looking for Eric Hayes, and so is Georgia Tech. So Cliff Tucker comes around the defense, catches it, and throws up a 3, and it goes in, and we won again. And this time it was for real.
Yeah.
So it made me very happy.
Yeah, it did. So that takes us all the way to senior night. So you got Gravis and John Shire going for Player of the Year.
The Terps.
Well, when was that game?
9 p.m. on a Wednesday.
And of course you got to go because sometimes I don't care about getting you to school. And what happened?
Well, Maryland comes out in the gold for the first gold rush ever. And I'm happy that I get to go, and everybody was. And Maryland just comes out, and they have an amazing amount of energy. And my favorite play as a Maryland fan, Jordan Williams runs down the middle and dunks on Kyle Singler's head. And the Terps would win it, and they storm the court, and we're the ACC co-regular season champions.
Those are great memories.
Sounds like the good old days.
Yeah, Bruce, they were. I put a similar story up on the Rivals site, and that's what somebody wrote back is those are great memories, but what about now? But you know what? 2010 was a great season and a very memorable ending. Take me all the way to the end, Mason.
Well, Maryland, Michigan State in the second round.
Okay.
The Terps were down by about 14 with 6 minutes left, and
Yeah.
Gravis Vasquez and the Maryland team goes off. And they were able to take the lead with 6 seconds left,
Yeah.
and Draymond Green runs up the court and passes it.
I can't hear this again. Bruce has his head in his hands.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I believe Corey Lucius throws up a 3, and it goes in.
The most improbable set series of about 12 seconds you could imagine, because the pass, one of the Michigan State players had a duck.
Should have hit him in the head.
Right, if it would have hit him in the head, and on top of it, Izzo was trying to call a timeout, and at that moment, Mason, I hit the floor and stared at the ceiling for 5 minutes because Maryland, that team, would have had to play, was it Northern Iowa?
You're choking me up here, getting emotional.
And then
again.
Tennessee to get to the Final Four, where they would have had to play Duke, first Butler and then Duke. There was a ticket to the end for this team. And you know what? When Mason went over that starting lineup, the starting lineup was better than I remembered.
Probably. I think was Dave Neal still there?
No, he was
No,
gone.
2009.
Yeah,
So
he
what
was-
happened to you when that ball happened to go in the hoop?
Well, I fell on the floor, started crying, threw something across the room,
Yeah,
and just sat there and started crying.
It was dumbfounding.
it was.
Yeah.
That's as down a moment for that whole thing in a game, other than Kenny Denard undercutting Buck Williams at the end of the ACC tournament. Well, Mason, thank you for those recollections. That was a great season, and I hope we have more of those to look back. But it has to be magical. There's that magical moment when you become committed to being a fan, and I guess Mason's season was 2008. You know, mine was the Albert King team that beat Notre Dame in 1978 when Notre Dame was #1. Larry Gibson hit a free throw and a hook shot in College Park, and I was hooked for the rest of my life.
I think that my favorite game of all time, it might have been that Gravis game when they tied for the regular season title, but to me, the greatest Maryland game of all time, and I'm not going to go back to the 74, whatever it was, when we lost to NC State. The game against UConn to get to the Final Four in the championship year.
Up at Syracuse.
Right. To me, Maryland's play in that game against Karan Butler and Emeka Okafor and Ben Gordon, listen, that was a great Maryland team with talent, but more than that, it was a great Maryland team. Because that, certainly you can look at the exploits of those players in the NBA, it's not even close to the success Maryland's had. But that one game when Karan Butler was absolutely unstoppable.
Yep.
And and the Terps stayed in it and went to the wire, and Dixon hit that don't shoot 3, not Dixon, Blake.
Right.
And Dixon hit a 3 when the game was getting out of hand.
Top of the key.
Right. That win was just unbelievable, but there's been so many.
Well,
and I got to tell you, we've talked about it. There was a game last year when Maryland defeated Duke in that ACC tournament. That game was way up there.
Yeah.
It was way up there, the way that team played. And that's why I just think that maybe the gods are going to look our way in that ACC tournament.
Well, you think we're going to win tomorrow?
No, I don't think we're going to win the ACC tournament. I definitely think we're going to win tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, one of my other favorite games was when Maryland beat that team with Ralph Sampson and Jeff Lamp and all those guys. It was Adrian Branch and Herman Veal hit a shot from about just inside of half court to put it in overtime. So we've beaten Virginia when Virginia's been good.
We beat Virginia. I think our record against Virginia is unbelievable as far as one loss.
It is, but we've lost the last few. Like
But
6.
as far as the best ACC game ever, I think you might have to go back to the Len Bias game at North Carolina.
Oh, that's certainly on my list. Beating the Heels in the Dean Dome with Gatlin throwing the ball off of Warren Martin's rear end and hitting a layup, and Bias steals the inbound pass, and then Jeff Baxter hits for our Killer Bees. What at that point was a shot heard around the world. What a celebration on campus that night. That was as great as you could wrap 10 New Years together, and you wouldn't have outdone that.
And of course, Freddie always says that when it goes back to when we were in school, the defeat of South Carolina, 24-23 or 31-30, just a memorable game. So a lot of great memories. If you're at the game tomorrow, which I'm sure every great Maryland fan will be, stop by and see Wayne and myself. If you want to, after the game, we're doing a post game, and we're starting to get a little crowd watching it every day. So you're more welcome to come down. We do it directly at the end of the game. We do a post game, and we'd love to have you watch it if you want.